This is A Drink with a Friend. I'm Tsh Oxenreider.
And I'm Seth Haynes.
Hi, Seth. What are you drinking?
I am drinking coffee from my favorite little coffee shop downstairs, Hail Fellow Walnut. I thought that since we were kicking back off a new season, that I would have a really, really good celebratory drink.
Nice.
So that's my stuff today.
All right.
And I'm excited about it.
Very cool.
Yeah. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking my apple cider vinegar mocktail that I've talked about from time to time. I mentioned it this week in my Substack newsletter. So I was thinking of my readers and wanted to give them little cheers. So for those who don't remember, read it on my Substack because I mentioned it. It's just this nerdy little pretend drink, but it's actually good for you. And I like it.
Man, you know what? We ought to ask our listeners for all of their favorite mocktails. I think, I would love to have like a recipe book of like 20 mocktails that I could just kind of choose from. That's
actually a really, really good idea because even though I drink alcohol from time to time, and I know you don't really, we're recording on Wednesday at noon. So it's not like I'm really going to drink much alcohol if I ever do, it's like for specific reasons. So that would be fun. Otherwise, they're just going to keep hearing us talk about water and coffee.
Yeah. Which that could kind of get boring, right?
Yeah. I mean, I get bored hearing us talk about coffee and water. So, yeah.
That's probably true. But when you say if you're drinking at noon, it's probably on a Wednesday, it's probably for a specific reason. Like, what would that reason be?
Like it's the last day of school or something like that. Like it's not.
Oh, okay.
It's not for any other reason other than like once or twice a year or something, or my birthday. I don't know. Like I'm such a rare drinker that I can't imagine drinking for any other reason than like to toast to something. And here's the thing. I also I know we're talking, you and me, but, and as we will get to talking about, I think in this one, I much prefer in person. It kind of weirds me out to think that I would be like pouring myself a drink with alcohol and it's like me and my dog here, kids are at school. Kyle's at work.
Like drinking alone at noon on a Wednesday might be indicative of like a problem or something.
Yeah, that says something else, I think. And I don't want to go there. I just don't. So
no, I think that's probably wise. It's a word of wisdom right there.
But I mean, that's a great segue because it was a year ago, gosh, it was a month ago that we were in person together with 27 other lovely human beings. And we're here to talk about that and talk about, I don't know, lessons learned, life experiences had. So how you doing a month later?
Man, I'm doing fantastic, except for that I wish that I were back in Italy. And I really, you said 27 people. That sounds like so many people, right? That we traveled to Italy with 27 people.
Yeah. Of whom we knew almost none in advance, right?
Yeah. Literally almost none. I knew a couple. And I think, did you know a couple?
Yeah. A collective few people. And then you and Amber.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Present company excluded. Yeah, man, I really miss those people. So when you ask how you doing, I felt rejuvenated when I got back. I felt really full of life. It was a really amazing trip. But I really miss all those amazing 27 humans that we got to spend time with for 10 days.
I know. I got a letter in the mail a few days ago from Juju, which was very fun.
Yes.
She just cut out a newspaper clipping and put a little note on it why she thought of me. And to me, that is just classic, not only classic Juju, but classic of that era that she represents. And it just makes me long for that slowness, of I'm going to take the time to find scissors to cut out something because I don't know, my grandma used to do that too. And I used to kind of roll my eyes at that, oh, come on, just, I don't know. To me, it seemed extra or like a waste of time, but I absolutely don't think that anymore. And it just makes me long for that real present company,
Yeah. So for the listeners who don't know, explain who Juju is.
Well, to kind of preface it, like you said, we didn't know who would be coming with us to Italy. But we were probably somewhat surprised, I think, at the beginning to discover what a wide range of people that came along with us. And in one way, there was such diversity was in age. So Juju was our oldest participant. She's nearly 80. I don't know when she turns 80, but basically 80. And she was there with her daughter, both of whom were fantastic human beings. And she, I think, surprised us all with how much energy she had, how much life she brought to the group, and how just present she was for every single moment of Italy, and what a lesson that was for all of us.
Yeah. I mean, it was hotter than Hades. Literally, it was so hot. I mean, just walking outside, you would drip with sweat. So it was hot. There's tons of walking. I think one day I took 28,000 steps or something.
Right.
So it was super hot. There was lots of walking. There were tons of like hills to negotiate. And about the time that any of us felt really sorry for ourselves, you would look up and there was Juju, 15, feet ahead of you,
right.
walking strong, uphill and laughing. It was just delightful.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we're gonna, in a moment, not to jump the gun, but we're gonna play some of our attendees' moments of what they learned. And hers, I still think about, because I think she mentioned a color she grew to appreciate while in Italy because of Italy. And I love that is a thing she noticed. And to me, I guess that's one of my big takeaways from Italy, is the idea of being really, really, really present, not taking photos to post to Instagram, but just either taking photos for the art of taking photos, or just not even, and noticing things like the color that you're looking at. She was a great reminder of that. And so is everybody else, honestly. I mean, those conversations we had around food and into the evening, those remain my favorite bits of the trip.
Yeah. So speaking of things you noticed, like what were the things for you, again, a month away, looking back at travel with this group of 27 people that you didn't know? What are the things that you noticed, the things that you take away?
Well, this sounds really cliche, and I've already kind of alluded to it, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I think I was just still surprised at how much it was the people and the conversations that were the biggest delights of the trip, and not necessarily the cathedrals and the art, even though I absolutely love those. We got some bucket list worthy moments of seeing some stuff that I know you and I both have wanted to see. But it was really those really small conversations next to the person, or with the person next to you. I think a highlight for me was that time that your wife, Amber, and our friend Bond and I took a taxi to the little town to get gelato for everyone, and we brought it back and we just sat around and had gelato. That was nothing fancy. Like, that was the opposite of fancy. We got styrofoam containers of gelato, but that was such a great moment. Just people that a week ago I didn't even know graced the planet at the same time I did. And here we are talking with them, even though that day we were like, I don't know, literally seeing a monastery or a saint's relics, or, some famous work of art, some Botticelli. I still loved just chatting with, Matt, the literal genius, or Hope, the professor, or
the literal genius.
I mean, I know that's what everyone says, but it's really true. And here's the thing. I think one of the best takeaways for me is, since then, I have found myself being more present with people. Like, I have this standing date to go to have coffee at 309, which everyone remembers is the coffee shop right by my house, with just neighbor friends on Friday afternoons. Like, we just kind of have this open, like, hey, whoever can go there for an hour or so. And I find myself just so much more engaged, so much, like, I literally forgot my phone, and that was perfectly fine, So I'm really grateful for that reminder to just focus on the person in front of you. How about you? What was a big takeaway for you?
Yeah, I love travel. I love travel for a variety of reasons, and some of the reasons are the same ones that you do. You know, you meet interesting people, you see interesting things and places, and amazing art. When there's like a pilgrimage element, it's especially good because you have these spiritual moments. Whether for me it was, discovering quasi by accident that we were in the church housing Saint Ignatius's burial place. Like I had no idea that's where we were, and then I looked down and I was like, "Holy crap, that's where Saint Ignatius is buried!" Like it was so surreal.
Mm-hmm.
Or whether it was, being downstairs, in the crypt where Saint Francis was buried, which was my confirmation saint, and was just an amazing experience. You have these amazing experiences with amazing people, and you eat amazing food, and this is all really great and life altering. Like there are memories that I'll have from those moments and carry with me forever. But my favorite part was, you may recall, we were coming back. Maybe we were coming back from Subiaco. I don't remember, but we were coming back from somewhere, and I really needed to stop at a camera store for a particular reason. And so there was a camera store that was about probably 4 miles away from where we were staying. And so we stopped off. I went in, I got what I needed, and then I was looking for a taxi, and I couldn't find one. But what I did find was an electric bike. And I jumped on this electric bike, and I rode all the way back to the hotel where we were staying, weaving in and out of traffic, acting like just an absolute, Roman citizen who's going to rule the roads with his bicycle.
Right.
And there was something about that moment of like saying, okay, this is how people do it here. I'm going to do it like the people do it here. I'm going to totally immerse myself in what it means to be in traffic in Rome. And it was a completely solitary moment. And I don't know, there was something about that was just like really, I don't know, empowering is a weird word. But it was like just a special moment, like where I figured out how to get home on my own using an electric bike that I rented with an app. And that was really cool to me.
Yeah.
So that, to me, that was like a big one.
I think empowering is the right word there, even though that sounds so silly, like you ride a bike, but it really is. There's something about being in another culture and you realize like, I can do this, I think is really almost a rite of passage of sorts, kind of like with our own kids, So that, I completely believe that would be a highlight for you.
And I think those are things that, to be really clear, like I think these are things that I, in no small degree, have learned from you. Whether it was from, reading your books about travel or your posts about travel or from being with you in Italy the first time. I mean, these are things when it's like, you don't have, when you're in these places that you don't understand, you don't know the culture, you can't speak the language, it can be really daunting to try to navigate. But then there's this like freedom that comes when you realize, oh, they don't really care if I mess up. In fact, they kind of appreciate that I'm taking a shot and trying to win and trying to work this out on my own.
Yeah.
And I think when you realize that, there's just a ton of freedom that comes with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I learned that from Kyle when I first met him 20 something years ago. He was a guy that I met in Kosovo where, we were both working with Albanians, and he was the type that would just totally botch the language because he would just try. And I was this perfectionist who would hold back till I like understood the grammar before I would try and order something. And I missed out on an opportunity and actually, probably improve my grammar because I'm trying. And so to me, that was a really good boots on the ground life lesson for just life, like you're gonna mess up. You're gonna look like an idiot.
Totally.
Also, no one's gonna remember like you think they are because no one's really paying attention to you in a good way like you think they are. So just go ahead and give it a try. And I'm speaking now metaphorically about all sorts of things in life, but that includes things like an electric bike in Rome,
Absolutely. So I mean, for me, those were kind of the big takeaways. That was the biggest sort of like fun takeaway, I guess. But what I really loved, what I really, really loved was hearing the takeaways from the people who traveled with us.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly because they didn't really know us either. And their vulnerability was amazing.
Yeah. That is very true. Like when I think about some of the conversations we had, it's pretty astounding to think like we were talking, I mean, kind of as strangers, but not really because we were having a shared experience. But really, some of the things some of them shared just because we were sitting next to each other on a bus, that was a big deal that they were willing to open up. And I'm not saying like we're so honored. It goes both ways, to where we then do the same, give them the same honor as a form of friendship. Yeah, it's a really big deal to have those moments of vulnerability and openness with people that you otherwise wouldn't have known a month before.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And loved hearing from them. And I think it would be really fun to share some of the takeaways with the people here.
I do too. And we're going to start it off with, I guess, well, I don't know what order Kyle's going to put this in. Let's just find out. But you and Amber and I, our second to last day, our last full day, we did stop at a gelato shop. So you'll hear us probably with background noise, but that's kind of the charm of it all, of us sitting at an Italian beach just chatting.
So, Tish, what is it that you hope to take back with you to the States?
So we've been to Italy before, but not with this group of people. And we didn't know the people that were going to come with us. It was a group of strangers mostly. And I think for me, I was reminded again, meaningful conversations in meaningful places. Why it matters so much to actually like go, 6,000 miles? A whole heck ton of miles away. For our favorite thing to be like late night gelato runs and talking by the pool. Don't get me wrong. I loved seeing St. Monica. I loved seeing the, Benedictine monastery. Those were fantastic. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But if I'm going to take anything away, it's going to be like that really great chat I had last night with Marissa. And I never expect that. I'm always surprised by those being my favorite things. And yet I shouldn't be surprised because that's like how life's always been.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just reminded of how great conversations are with people. How about you, Amber?
I really loved going to the monastery of St. Benedict. Maybe the thing that stands out the most to me, and seeing the frescoes on the wall, it was like being asked a lot of really important questions from long ago and how I'm going to play out into the future. And so I have this feeling of I have work to do as I move forward, and that work has to be done with the people in my real life and the people that I'm with and the people that just end up in my path. Yeah. So it's this beautiful art and this beauty and this ancientness that feels like it's sending me forward.
Yeah, I think my takeaway every time I go to a different culture is just seeing the beauty of the people. So I'm with you. I got to see the burial place of St. Ignatius, which was ornate and beautiful. I got to see the burial place of St. Francis, which was in some degree simple and beautiful, just stone and wood and fire. But also, I'm just watching the Italian people ride by on on bicycles, and, Vespas and things like this. Taking pictures, holding hands, ordering food, trying to sell us sunglasses, street vendors, all of these things. And it's the beauty of just people out in the world. And I think that's, when I think of the way of beauty, I think of people trying to forge a way of beauty. And that's the mark of a good life. That's my takeaway.
We're with people all the time, and they just kind of become, they can be like furniture sometimes. Like, this just what you walk past. We know there are stories there, but when you get to step away a little bit like this and look at a beautiful couple's marriage when they've been married for almost 40 years, and you can watch them interact and talk about what all they've been through, or another person's intense loss but healing. I don't know. It's been a good step away to look at the beauty of humanity.
And I think that's actually why kind of the best reason for travel, like the best reason to just step away from your home temporarily, not to like escape. Escapism is the worst reason to travel. Like, you're not trying to find yourself. You're trying to find yourself back home. And I think you find it, you find who you are among your community by going away from your community so you can come back.
That's right.
And that's what being around people in a new place has reminded me.
Okay, so one thing we were talking about already, to recap this for our listeners. This group has turned out to be, it's got the Catholic bent because y'all are in charge, but actually the group has a variety of faith backgrounds. And also we've got Fulvio who knows what. Who knows. So we're in, okay, so Holly and I have been talking about progressively throughout this. We encountered these like stories that are sometimes beautiful, sometimes creepy, and like how do people take them? How do, especially like we've wondered how some of the Catholics in the group take them because it's so far from our experience. But then we had the realization that like this isn't Catholic history. Everything we're looking at right now is actually our history. It's Christian history. This is all before we were like an us versus them or split into different personalities as our faith. So it's really all of ours. And that was also reflected kind of in the dynamic of the group, that there were no divisions, that we were all experiencing this along the way. So while we came here traveling together as a unit, it's actually like we all operated as a larger body, which I guess is what the church does as a whole. And so to see that, and even those of us who are not coming from a faith perspective, Italy has the history of like our version of civilization. So there's so many ways that we can all plug into that. And that's for me what literature, which is my primary source of beauty, artistic beauty, it does that. It helps you, it builds empathy for sure, but that includes empathy for the other as you're reading stories that are outside of our experience. And so we experienced that here as we all were coming from different perspectives, or we're hearing these stories of different people who have done things that don't even make sense to us. But also you have empathy for yourself because it also is your story. And so art, beauty, in all those ways is a way to know other people and know yourself better, and brings us into a common experience of that.
I mean, the thing I keep thinking about, I think the day that was the most moving for me was when we were in Assisi. And so it's been really fun for me to learn the stories of our heritage. I mean, like Hope said, there's some weird stuff. Like there's a finger and a head, and I don't know why,
Right.
But it was super refreshing.
A lot of mummies.
Yeah. It was super refreshing to hear you and talk to you and to Bond. I can't remember who else about that. And to know that it's not, I mean, to be Catholic isn't to drink all the Kool-Aid or however you want to say that, that part of it. And maybe so, but I think Italy has like, in a weird way, opened us up to each other in ways that it wouldn't have otherwise. Mm-hmm. And it's been really fun to watch Hope and enjoy it. This is the part that's gonna make her throw up. I just haven't. I mean, we have these conversations together all the time, but to like watch her experience that joy with other people is really sweet. So I really liked that. I really liked like laughing really hard at the table the other night. It was just I think like we make fun of like mission trips, but there's a lot of joy in those trips too, like memories. And I think the older we get, the farther away those experiences can be. So yeah, I was really surprised. I think coming into it, I had very low expectations, which is just kind of how I operate in life. And then I'm like pleasantly surprised sometimes.
Yellow has never been my particularly favorite color. You know, I rather have pinks or reds in my garden. I don't usually choose yellow or flowers or whatever, but when she said it, I opened my eyes, and there were some lovely intermittent yellow leaves on an otherwise very green tree. And I said, wow, isn't that pretty? And then as we rode on, there were beautiful yellow, as opposed to the more peach colors. I noticed how many lovely yellow facades of homes there were. Of course, there were beautiful yellow umbrellas, many places at the beach and in other areas. It has struck me quite often how many yellow-haired or blonde children I have seen on this trip. The mom, the children, sometimes the dad, all have quite pale yellow blonde hair. When we really needed a restroom, we saw the yellow arches of McDonald's and headed right for it as we left the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Every now and then I'd notice Kristen's yellow, if I were looking for her yellow straw hat, and culminating with my yellow lemon dress that Kristen insisted I would wear hereafter, and was able to get at the beach. So I have a new appreciation for yellow, and I'm associating it with Italy and this wonderful trip.
One thing that I noticed is because we had so many days in a row of seeing beautiful things after beautiful things, is that when I'm not rested, I am numb to beauty. So I got kind of burned out, but it wasn't like too much beauty. It was too little stopping to rejuvenate.
That's good. Yeah.
So like my ability to see beauty and to experience beauty definitely depends on rest, and I'm going to take that home and not be so frantic.
20 years ago, I'm a book person, like love books. And so I was reading Under the Tuscan Sun by Frances Mays one night, and I just began to cry. And I couldn't understand what was happening. And I told my husband, I think it's because I feel homesick for some place I've never been, and I'm afraid I'll never go. And so when this opportunity came up, it just was the perfect time for me, and it was the perfect situation. And because of books, I had read you and Amber's books and Tish's books, because I'm a book person. And so that kind of gave me the confidence to come on this trip. And I've been reading a beautiful book while I've been here called The Beauty Chasers by Timothy Willard. And it's just like books have been a theme that it feels like has led me on this trip, and just underlining things, real life experiences of things that in my head I knew. But it has been incredible, and the beauty has far exceeded what I had hoped for.
Good.
The expectations. So.
The beauty of the countryside, the beauty of the art.
The beauty of, yes, the art, the architecture, the countryside, and even surprisingly, the people and the relationships that we have developed over the last few days in such a short time. But I think experiencing beauty together with other humans makes it even more special.
I love Tim Willard, and one of the things he talks about a lot is how beauty is actually objective. Like, there are subjective components to, like, things that we love and things that we don't, but how beauty is, like, actually an objective experience. Like, when you see it, you, like, can't deny it.
Right.
Right? I mean, has that been your reflection here? I mean, has that been the truth for you
and
here?
one thing I read at the beginning of our trip from his book is that beauty is an event. And it is something that we, like, it's an event that we experience. And that's definitely, like, when we went to St. Benedict's Monastery, like, that was just such a moving place to be and experience. And it's really hard for me right now to even put into words how the beauty has captivated me.
Yeah.
Well, when Tsh asked us about what is beauty and what does it mean, I started thinking about just, how do people define it? And the golden ratio came to my mind, which made me think of relationships. So how does space relate to other space, colors relating to one another, and then just expanding out, because it could be the emotions that are portrayed in what you're viewing. But then what do I find beautiful? In my family, relationships, making new friends, and even in nature, like the Fibonacci sequence can be found in so many different things, which is really another way of relationship, a mathematical relationship term. So that's what I've been ruminating on.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm not nearly as smart as she is.
Fulvio, I love your love of your country. Yes. And thank you for sharing it with us. We've all been blessed by it. Grapefruit gelato. Those who know. And honestly, I mean, my last one, I put everyone's step of faith in coming on a trip with mostly strangers. I know a few people knew each other, but it's a lot of strangers. That's a big deal. To get on a plane. I know a lot of people shared their I almost don't want to come stories. I think a lot of people felt that way, but I'm just so grateful that y'all took a step of faith and decided to join in what was in some ways not an experiment. We knew what we were doing, but travel's always an experiment, and group travel's always a little bit, what's this going to be like? Is this going to be weird? But this has been such a cool group that we couldn't have planned. It's super, could not have been anything we orchestrated. So I'm just very grateful that y'all came along. So thank you. All right. So Seth, before we wrap this up, we got to do what we've always done and talk about the thing that's adding more beauty to our life in the here and now, because we're not in Italy anymore as much as we would rather be. But, there's good stuff here. That's actually one of my big takeaways, too, is here's pretty good, too. Everywhere's pretty good in its own way. So what's something adding beauty to your life right now?
Well, Tsh, are you ready for me to get myself canceled? Sometimes I fear.
Let's just kick off the season.
It is what it is.
Right.
Yeah. Come on, let's go. So, we are very soon going to have Abigail Favale on.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And she has written a book called The Genesis of Gender.
Yeah.
And dude, it is so good. And the reason it's so good is because in the world in which we live, sometimes you can sort of be, to me anyway, I can be swept up into sort of the argument of the age, if that makes sense. There are really good, compassionate reasons for making a lot of space for people. And I still believe in that. I still believe in making space for all kinds of different people in your very real life. But there are some arguments, particularly around the issues of gender, that I really just didn't understand the background, if that makes sense. What was the genesis of that argument? So sort of for instance, the argument for sort of a genderless or a gender fluid, world. I didn't understand the basis or the background of that argument. And her book has really helped me unsort some things that were just kind of sticking. I was just kind of getting stuck on some, societal arguments that didn't necessarily make a ton of sense to me, and I was just kind of getting stuck. And her work has actually really helped me unstick. It doesn't mean that I have the luxury of being uncompassionate to people. It doesn't mean that I'm unloving towards people, but it helped me think more clearly about, maybe what I think about gender and sexuality in a lot of ways. So I've been reading her book. I think it's really good. I highly recommend it. You may or may not agree with it. But even if you don't agree with it, it's so worth reading just to understand, a different perspective.
It really is. This is Wednesday, and literally this week, this is the third time from a separate person that Abigail's book has been brought up in my life. It is really hitting people where they are, because I think all of us have a lot of these questions that we're either not sure where to go, or feel embarrassed to ask, or are nervous about getting canceled just for asking. And this is the best book I have yet found on this topic. And I can't wait to talk with her, because I think this drink with a friend crowd will really resonate with her. And like you said, you don't have to agree with her, but that's kind of what we're about here, like entertaining ideas that maybe you don't necessarily agree with, but that's okay, because we're nuanced and we learn from each other. So yeah, great choice.
Yeah, that's right. We learn from each other. That's a really good way to put it. And like you said too, I think it's really important to read arguments that you both agree with and don't agree with, because they really do help you shape a better thought process, better ways of thinking. So, Tsh, what is it right now that is bringing some truth, beauty, or goodness to your life?
Well, I am on the last chapter of the last book in C.S. Lewis's space trilogy, sometimes also known as the Ransom trilogy. Have you read it before?
No, I haven't, but it's funny that you say that, because my son raised this the other day.
Really? Okay. It's a bonkers, wacky story, but I kind of love it. It's really weird. It's sci-fi, which I enjoy, but it's also C.S. Lewis sci-fi, which is to say it's chock full of theology and anthropology and just some goofiness. And I really like it. It's a bit of a head scratcher at times. Kind of wonder where the hell he's going with some of it, but it's also just fun and enjoyable. And I just kind of wanted to get lost in a world for a while that was entirely, I think the best fiction is sometimes truer than the real world, or at least points to the truer things of the world that we ignore. And I think this book does this trilogy does a great job of that. I will say for my kids, we read the first one out loud. And then we started the second one, and then I don't remember what happened. We just had to, I think life. And so then I finished it on my own. And then the third one is completely different from the first two. And I think my kids, except for Tate, would be bored, because it's not it's an entirely different beast. So just, listeners' mileage may vary on that regard, but that's what I find. I think it's definitely an adult book, but it's not because it's edgy. It's just because I mean, the third book gets into a lot of the administration details of running a college kind of stuff, but it's actually, it's so weird and unexpected, but it's actually really interesting. So yeah, Space Trilogy by C.S. Lewis. I recommend it. Just be prepared for weirdness.
I mean, I'm always prepared for weirdness. That sounds amazing. Are these books typical Lewis, not quite as long, or are they heftier? The
first two aren't super long. The third book is considerably longer. I want to say the third one is twice as long as the other two. And he says in various places that you can read each one separately. And in fact, you could read the second one and not have read the first one. That said, they dovetail beautifully as a series. So I would recommend just doing the whole thing, because you meet a guy, the protagonist makes a lot more sense in book 3 when you know his experience from book 1. So, okay. And this was some of his early work. This is long before Narnia. This is book 2 was at the onset of World War II. So when he read it, or wrote it. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. Final thing before we wrap up. I don't know if you want to say this or me, but we have decided for this season that we are going to take a rhythm of every other week posting a chat for various reasons.
Yeah, we've decided to move to that format primarily because life, right? Life is just so full, and we both have so much going on, and we want to make sure that we're providing really good, thoughtful, meaningful content. And so, this gives us kind of that opportunity to really think through episodes a couple weeks in advance. It gives us space to sort out our recording schedule, and we hope it's going to give us some space to create and produce sort of some third spaces for people to sort of gather together like we did in Italy,
Mm-hmm.
even though it'll be online, and maybe talk out some things about the show and listen to some bonus content. So we're hoping that it gives us a little bit of extra space and margin to create that in this season of A Drink with a Friend. And then I guess we can reevaluate at the end of this season.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you said it very well. I think we want to make sure we're not the people that, whenever you watch a show and you think like they just added this last season because they wanted to, not because there was more story to be told. I think we want to make sure that we keep this good. And I think that's what we're going to do by, giving you a little bit less, but a whole lot better. Not that it's been bad, but, keeping it really good. And like you said, we've got more in store. And I mean, you and I have like other jobs and children and seniors in high school and stuff like that. And we're also primarily writers. So this podcast is our little, enjoyable reason to talk with each other and with our listeners. But we want to keep it enjoyable.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, it's time to wrap this one up then. You can find this episode as well as all episodes at adrinkwithafriend.com. And you can also find there how you can help support the show by picking up the next round of drinks. The show is free for you to listen to, but it's not free for us to make. So at the cost of just a cup of coffee or a pint, you can help us keep it going. Again, that's at adrinkwithafriend.com, which is also in the show notes of this episode. You can find me and how to connect with me, especially via my newsletter where I'm hanging out quite a bit lately, at tishoxenwriter.com. Seth, how about you?
They can find me at sethhaines.substack.com. And I'm writing more frequently these days, so it's been a lot of fun to see people there.
Yeah, I like it. Music for the show is by Kevin MacLeod. Editing is by Kyle Oxenreiter. I'm Tish Oxenreiter with Seth Haines, and we'll be back here again with you soon in, I guess, a couple of weeks. So thanks for listening.
We love you all, and we hope to see you on the next trip.
Yeah, come along.